So the first thing I want to try to convince you of is the fact that energy, believe it or not, is a high-tech industry. And why do I say that? That's because of the fact that really it's a derived demand for a service from a piece of capital equipment. And so you don't directly consume energy like you would consume hamburgers. What you need is a piece of capital equipment and an energy source to provide the service that you want. And so what happens is that we have technological change that essentially impacts both of those things. The other concept that I think is very important is the concept of what are reserves, and essentially the whole idea of essentially, are we running out of fossil fuel? And in fact, that's really what's the issue is technological change is always sort of fighting against this depletion, in the sense that the two things that determine reserves are essentially the two things that we don't know too much of. In particular, reserves depend upon existing technology and current prices. And essentially, we don't know what future price is going to be, and more importantly, we just don't know what future technology is going to be.
We need to have a framework that integrates demand and supply, studies uncertainty seriously, so that we can think about what the implications of that uncertainty is for oil prices and thinking through policy issues.
The reason that you get these differentials in prices in terms of oil is simply because the infrastructure cannot allow the oil to move. But the other issue that you mentioned I think is extremely interesting, and that's the issue of, can we have an integrated global market for natural gas? And here I think the important point to bear in mind is different from oil, which you can just, you take it out, you put it in a barrel, and you can put the barrel and move it anywhere. With natural gas, it's got to be in the pipeline.
When we're thinking about scenarios where the price of oil could be rising over time, obviously if it's inelastic, an increase in the price of oil means that it will take a bigger share of the household budget. So at some point there will be incentives for people, when the budget share that's used for oil gets bigger and bigger and bigger, there will be incentives or trigger points where basically households will move to other things, and that will depend on how much, whether or not you've got the infrastructure in place to use natural gas and so on. But it'll also depend on things like how rich the country is. I just want to caution this idea that basically we can take this shale oil and export it to the rest of the world. There's sort of three reasons why it's worked so well in the U.S. One is property rights. Right. So basically you can go and buy the rights. People own the rights to sell. Two, there are environmental concerns in the rest of the world where population density is really high. There are even concerns in the U.S. where population density is pretty high, right? So there are environmental concerns. The last one is geology. So the actual structure of the rocks is a little bit different in the rest of the world, and the types of technology, to go back to Frank's point about technology is important. So the actual technology that we have for doing shale oil is suited very well for the U.S. That doesn't mean that we won't discover a technology for doing it other places that have different kinds of rocks.